It's Wednesday. Welcome back to Theorycraft, a live podcast where game developers and their players engage in conversation. It's been some time, but I'm ready to do this thing. Halloween has happened, and we're in fucking November, and it's getting dark super early now, and it's cold in Vancouver. Like, gosh, it's just been forever. What's up with you two? I haven't really caught up with, like, Candace, we don't really talk a ton outside of broadcast hours, but even Chris, like, I missed you last week.
Yeah,
I just feel like I'm in a hole. Yeah, like we haven't been fraternizing as often. You're all busy. I'm in my game hole. What are you up to?
Yeah, I mean,
lately,
for a
man?
long time, me and Luca would talk like several times a day because we're working from home and we're going through COVID, and the world was like, crazy, and still kind of crazy. But yeah, I just think the holidays are here already. I mean, it's crazy that the last podcast we were talking about Halloween, and now it feels like Thanksgiving's in a week, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just insane.
It's
how fast
flying.
things are moving.
I knew this day would come. I just want to say, I miss you. And I knew that as soon as Noto started and like everybody was working there and y'all were going to be having such a good in-person time all the time, I'm like, I bet the Discord's going to quiet down. And it has.
Yeah.
But
I do want to I keep telling myself, well, things are just going to get little like, things will calm down a little, chill out a bit, and then I'll get back into the cadence of chilling out on Discord for a couple hours every night. But I just haven't gotten there yet. Last night I came home, ate, and was watching TV and fell asleep on my couch and slept the entire night on my couch. That's just been what I've been focused on recently is, trying to hire the last remaining positions at the studio. Right. It's something, Candace and me and you too, we've all interviewed before and had to go through that process, but it's a whole different thing when you're like the first point of contact. You see like all the initial kind of applicants, and you have to filter through them, and we've had probably like almost 400 or more like applicants, and so sifting through all of that pretty much is my full-time job right now. I haven't even been able to respond to probably a fraction of them, right? So
yeah.
And then there's some that we have to like move forward with quicker than not. And so, yeah, just I'm a hiring manager right now, basically. So, but
so sad too, because I feel like if this amazing opportunity to make the MMO with Riot had not come up, then I would have I've been knocked on your door and been like, "Hello, yes, would you like a game director? Hello, thank you."
Yes, I mean, I would love to work with. We'll work together again at some point. We're working together here a little bit with the podcast, which is fun.
Basically.
We'll see. I'll steal you from Greg. Greg will have to deal with it. But I really look forward to the day when both of you come by and we could all have lunch together and you could see the office and play our game.
About that, this is like kind of real lifey, but I found out that there are direct flights from Vancouver to John Wayne there in Santa Ana.
Really?
So, yeah, and I think that some of my friends who live in Costa Mesa area may move up towards Seattle in the next several months, and so I'm thinking I want to come down to California before that happens and just chill out there renting a house. So anyways, when I do, I'll just let you know, and hopefully we can work out some hangs, maybe early in the new year. We'll figure it out. We could do an in-person podcast. Oh my God.
That would be so fun. Yeah, figuring out you'll have to figure out all the logistics of the AV though.
Well, I don't know. You're producing studio announcement videos now. I feel like you probably got me scooped on that, but
and that thing stressed me out like you wouldn't believe. So
yeah, dude. Chris was hitting me up nonstop trying to find these min-maxed microphone solutions and how we should record. I guess you just take for granted so much of the work that goes into the production because we live in an environment where we're all just consuming content all the fucking time, and then when it's your turn to step up to the stage and make a video, it's suddenly wow, how do I do this? Even be on the level of the people I'm subscribed to. It's not hard, but it does take a lot of upfront work, which, as we know, you love digging into. So yeah, glad you're keeping busy. Candace,
I actually I moved to Playa Vista.
Right.
I moved closer to Riot, Los Angeles. ish area, about 20 minutes away from Santa Monica. Well, actually less. Like without traffic, I think it's 13 minutes, Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to it yet here, and change is hard. And so, of course, I want to reject it, and I think I'm really sad here. But we'll see. I need to give it more time.
Oh, wow. You haven't lived in LA before?
Yeah, there's just a very different vibe, and I still haven't really put my finger on it, but I do know that the people here that I've been exposed to so far, which is only a handful of people, have been significantly meaner than I'm used to. But
Really?
I felt that way when I moved from Texas to Orange County as well. Because in Texas, I was used to, like at restaurants, there's big picnic tables, and you just sit with other people at picnic tables. And I tried to pull that bullshit in Orange County, and the lady got mad at me, and she's like, "Are you a waiter or something? Why are you sitting down on the job?" No, I'm just there's nowhere else to sit. I thought I could sit across from you.
Cool.
But yeah, I specifically that the first couple of bad interactions was one of my neighbors got so mad that I was using an elevator to move in. And she's like, "You can't do that." And I said, "I don't know. The office kind of said that I could." And she's like, I'm telling the office on you." And I was like, "Please do." And then that wasn't enough. She had to harass the movers and stuff too. And she just kept doing it. She kept checking in, like, "You're still, I can't believe." Like, okay, whoa.
Yeah. You like getting off on the best foot with your neighbors.
Yeah. I went to FedEx to ship a return, but it was something I was unfamiliar with. And so I walked in, and she's like, she waves me forward, and I went to the wrong cash register, and she just kind of like points, like with an angry look on her face, at the cash register she's on. And I was like, "Oops, I'm sorry." And then I said, "I'm not sure how to initiate this return, but I didn't tape it closed just in case we need to put a form inside or something." And I said, "Here's my QR code." And I showed her my phone, and she looks at me and she goes, "Put your phone away. I'm not even logged in yet." And I was like, "What the fuck?" But like in general, I feel like the vibe that I'm getting, and this is just hot take, obviously, very few interactions, is that everybody here is in a big goddamn hurry, and I'm just not used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even the difference between NorCal and SoCal is so different. But what I always hear from everybody is like working at Blizzard was kind of like a bubble, right? And so it wasn't even indicative of necessarily Orange County or California. And it was just, really kind of the culture at Blizzard was really great, and people were really great and nice. Yeah, I don't know. And it's weird too, because it's like, yeah, you are going to Riot and working there, but it's not like the same because you're not, in the office. And
I would love to go to the office. Yeah, that would make me feel good.
You're not spending 969 on the gated campus yet or anything like that, which was kind of like the Blizzard way, right? And then you just hung out with Blizzard people all the time outside of work and went to breweries and stuff. And the bubble was definitely real.
Yeah, I was having this conversation. This is an interesting sidebar, but I was having this conversation with another founder, and he was talking about this is totally weird to hear, but he was trying to get his team to not hang out with each other. Because he just was worried about, their entire social lives coming from work or whatever. And I can understand why he is scared of that, but ultimately you really can't. What are you going to do? You can't control people's social lives. And the fact of the matter is, most people become friends. Most people meet their significant other at work, right? And so I don't know if it's the job of the leader to make sure people don't do that, right? But
I'm not sure that that's what he meant. Maybe it is what he meant. I wasn't there, but I get what he's saying, where you want to promote happy, healthy culture in your studio and, in your workplace. And there are things you can do that aren't specifically saying, like, don't hang out with people from work, unless maybe you're in, like C-level management, or executive, or unless you're like in like management where you say like, "Hey, probably it's not best to fraternize with some of your team because they'll be perceived." What's the word I'm looking for? Like you prefer them over somebody else. But there are things that you can do to promote happy, healthy people. And like one is have a really strong system of checks and balances to make sure that people aren't promoting their buddies. So that there's no impropriety is the word I was looking for, ladies and gentlemen, and I just found it. So there's no perceived impropriety going on. So and transparency, like part that this topic actually is pretty appropriate because there's the kind of transparency you need within your organization, but there's also the transparency you need with your community, with kind of like outside of your organization. So, and then other things like if somebody needs to take time off, it's never a big deal, right? Like, oh, you need to take time off your life is more important than work. Do the thing. We can live without you, and make sure that you can actually live without somebody and that nobody is the crux of your entire project. Anyway, so I just went off on a little tirade, but I think so. If you promote that kind of culture, though, where like it's not perceived that if you become buddy buddy with people, that's the only way to advance your career, but also you respect the lives that they do have, they might flourish in their own personal life, and they won't have to come to work for everything. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it all came from a good place. It's just it was so interesting to me because I think for maybe Blizzard is unique, but like what we're talking about, just a lot of your friends, a lot of your social life was also just with Blizzard people, and I never felt it was like a bad thing necessarily, but I can understand that's just it could be maybe a problem, but I just don't know.
Well, I think it can be bad for other people. It's just not bad for you. Like you're not the sort of personality type that is going to find themselves like indoctrinated by that kind of a forced culture. And it's definitely a real phenomenon at Blizzard. I actually thought we maybe were going to get all the way through this episode without even having to like mention Blizzard today, but I don't know why. That was just kind of like a fever dream. I certainly experienced that in my time there. Everybody, encouraging you to bleed blue and hashtag BlizzLife, paraphernalia in the cafeteria and the orc statue and everybody getting their picture taken. Like, I don't know. There's a line between what I might call kind of like company patriotism and, like I said, sort of like full indoctrination. And I think that's kind of a tough thing to ride. I would like to talk more at some point about these kinds of company structures. It's like a bit high level maybe for like a game design sort of podcast, but like it really gets done differently all over the place. You're having to grapple with it now, but like Clay is set up completely differently from Blizzard is because they're more aping
that is
the
a great
Valve
topic
model.
we should definitely talk about.
Yeah, and I also don't want to like speak out of turn as to the intentions of the founders and how they've created Clay, but my experience up here and landing at it has felt like way different than landing at Blizzard, and I would love to get into it more at some point. I think there are strong pluses and minuses, to sort of like every way you can set it up. But
yeah, we should do org structures episodes. Yeah. That'd be hot.
Well, yes, dude, like I was thinking earlier when somebody was talking, it was like we could do an episode on documentation. I mean, we can do an episode on everything, and it's just, but some of those topics are like, are these snoozers or what? Like, I don't know if people want to.
Yeah, they're interesting to us, but everybody else is like, what?
Yeah, I know. I never really know like how crunchy we versus just kind of off the cuff we should be going with these things.
Is this an actual interesting topic, or do we all just share the same trauma? Tune in at 6:30, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's the therapy hour.
Excellently summarized. Chris,
so what gaming news was this week? I'm really curious. I haven't even been paying attention. Sorry, what were you going to say, Lotta?
No, I mean, I saw Dune. You asked me last time. And
I
just kind of, like without spoilers.
Like
yeah, no, you said 4, I think, on HBO Max too. And like, it's like a 3-hour movie each. So that's a good chunk of time. That's like a personal Lord of the Rings marathon. And like, I enjoyed it, but I'm wondering like, what about it made you want to see it 4 times? Like,
I think really the world building, the mood, I've seen one of Denny's other movies. That's the director. That's what they kind of call him, Denis Villeneuve. I think is how you say his name. Blade Runner multiple times too.
Yeah.
Just because I just love the ambience, the world, the music. It's just I kind of think Cyberpunk kind of was influenced by the trailer of that movie, just because it it's just you just kind of want to live in that world, right? And so I get the same kind of thing with Dune a lot too. There's some really particular scenes I just really gravitate towards and I look at over again. One is the gosh, I always forget the Bene Gesserit, or I always forget how you say there. The priests, basically the witches scene with the box and
the Gom Jabbar or whatever it's called.
yeah, exactly.
The pain box.
That's a really great scene. There's just really a lot of good scenes in that movie. The movie I don't think is perfect, but it's one of the best kind of fantasy or sci-fi movies in recent memory. So, yeah.
I managed to catch it right before it left Dolby Atmos, which I was implored to do by all my audio colleagues. And it's a very dynamic film. I'm glad I got to see it in the theater. Like but we're basically the same person on this topic. I don't think anything need more be said because I saw 2049 5 times while it was still in theaters, and it was
wow. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I was obsessed. Oh. Well, it was an interesting time of my life, but that movie was glorious. And by the end, I kept uncovering layers and stuff too. But by the end, I like knew the whole score of the movie, kind of like as I was watching it. It became really comforting. I think that's just yeah. There's a personality type.
One of the scores I listened to while working is that one.
Yeah. I mean, it gets pretty intense at the end, but there's some solid tracks.
I have heard. I haven't. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say real quick. I haven't seen it in the theater, but I have heard. The voice is amazing.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What's up, Candace?
Sorry, go ahead, Candace.
Oh, I was just gonna say I didn't know what 2049 was, so I'm gonna.
2049
is the Blade Runner 2049, and I would love to say that when I Googled it, so I could feel like I was one of you fellow cool kids. The question that popped up was when I Googled it said, "Did Blade Runner 2049 lose money?" Like, well,
I think it did.
It did.
It might have been. It wasn't commercially successful, which I think is just so sad because I don't know. Because it's a really great movie, but I can understand why it's not for everybody. It's slow. There's some action, but it's not like action. It's not like a Transformer movie, or Marvel movie. So I don't know.
Probably why I saw it like 5 times as well. It felt like me chipping microtransactions into the cause of like wanting it to live and maybe like crest over financial success. Apparently I didn't see it enough times.
Oh, it did. Sorry, I misread. I was glossing over. It had a $150 to $185 million budget, and it made $259 million.
Yes.
So
all right. Good.
You're good.
I mean, it did well enough for him to make
Valheim
a
was
Dune,
commercially more successful, but it made money.
So speaking of games, you asked about news. My head's still really been in like kind of a new world state, but the things that perked up about in the last little bit, the Lost Ark closed technical beta happened. And
yeah,
I lost a bunch of my friends to playing that. Candace, I know you spent some time playing it too. What did you think?
I fucking loved it. I didn't get very far because I wanted to try all the classes in the class trial, and some savvy people were savvy to the kind of subtweet that I just got really frustrated because when you want to try the new class, you have to watch their cutscene, and so I had to, and you have to watch the cutscene for. Like there's a class and they'll have like 2 to 4 subclasses, and every time you want to try a new subclass, you have to watch like the class cutscene again, and it was just all large-chested anime women with the same body, like the 100% same thighs, same just different face, different hair, and different size breasts. And it was just uncanny. Like I could find no men in these cutscenes. I could find no other body types. Like not even like a like a scrawny or a. It's okay if it's still pleasing, like if it's still like culturally pleasing or whatever to have. But anyway, it's just the same body. It just really wore on me after a while, and I'm like, man, I really hope this game is good because I've watched no fewer than 13 cutscenes of big anime titties, and I just not to say that anime titties are bad. Because I did appreciate the first couple, but like 20 in a row was just like, well, who else exists in this universe besides like goddess, sexy women? Does anything else exist?
Oh, wait, so are all the character classes just like hot models, or is there like a recurring character that keeps appearing in these class cutscenes that you had to see over and over again? I don't.
There are some. They do the thing where some classes are like the classes are only a gender. So
I see.
there's
It's
like a
like
warrior and
Torchlight or
it's
something.
male.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then they'll have like martial artist male, martial artist female, and the female has different subclasses than the male. I shouldn't say male and female, but like man and woman.
Sure.
But they there is a recurring character that is important to the story, and she has the largest breasts of them all. But the thing is, you can't change your body type as the player. You can change your face and a lot of things about your face, but you can't change the proportions of your body. And so not only that was like the same for every class as well, but then the side characters, especially in at least the women oriented stories, even the side characters were like just a woman in lingerie again and again and again. It's like, ugh, just sick of it.
Yeah. Did you?
But the gameplay is very good.
Okay, the class trials, yeah. Any particular fondnesses?
I think the spell effects in the game are crazy cool.
It looks like crack, man. Like every clip I see of it, I'm just like, this looks like something that is just going to light my monkey brain up so hard, and I will not be able to stop playing. Like, it looks dangerous.
I want to play it. I know Stoops like loves that game. And I do want to play it. It's just I get this kind of vibe from it that's sort of like Diablo-ish. And Diablo combat to me just feels just kind of spammy and kind of, for me, it's just a little boring. I like more tactical combat, but maybe I'm not giving it a fair shake because I have heard that it has a lot of depth to it. So
it's very spammy. There are more abilities than Diablo. There is a lot of depth though in the. I call it the piano effect, like when you're playing a class like a piano where you want, a piano, you have 3 notes and it makes a chord, and you have a progression of chords and it makes a song. And that's kind of like your DPS rotation in WoW to a certain degree. It's the same in Lost Ark. So they have like twice as many abilities in Lost Ark as in Diablo, but they're very skill gappy. It's a very skill-based game in as much as in Diablo, you can't stop the enemies from attacking you unless you use a CC, like a button that is a CC. Monsters will just continue to attack you. But in like most action games in Lost Ark, they have like hit reaction. So whenever you hit a monster with the ability, it cancels out what they're doing, and you can essentially stun lock monsters. And so you don't have to have this reliance on having tanky gear as the difficulty of the game goes up, like you do in Diablo, because you're just guaranteed taking damage all the time. Which is, it's cool. Like, so I think that a lot of the depth there that you get in Lost Ark is avoiding damage or not taking any damage, because you will perceivably die in that game. So
it takes some practice to get into the rhythm of staggering enemies, or is it just basically like as fast as you can spam your skills, you're staggering them with every move that you make?
I did not find a single ability that did not stagger the enemies.
Oh, okay. So you just unload basically.
Yeah, you just unload.
They fight back. Okay.
But you have a lot of cooldowns on your abilities, so you have, and they surround you in ways that you can't always corral all of them. But in general, like that's why I really like the Spirit Dancer class, the martial artist female, one of the subclasses. And I like the Bard as well, but I don't play with enough people to just. The Bard is actually a support class. They have less damage, but they do like
buffs. They don't heal, right?
Yeah, like that.
Julian was mentioning that to me.
Yeah. It looks fucking great. I can't wait. I think.
So was it just like up for the weekend and it's like over, or?
I think it's still up. Is it not up?
Okay.
Is it?
Okay. Well, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Lotta.
No, I have one friend that I feel like I would be able to tell if it was still up because it was just showing him as in it, and he's been in it like nonstop since it started, but he's not. So maybe it stopped. I don't know. I haven't played a good ARPG like that in a minute. Like I never started it on PoE or anything, so I'm wondering if I'll rally around that pretty hard in March, I think.
Yeah, especially if the group dynamics work out as well as I'm hoping they will.
We should play together. I've recently discovered about myself again that I fucking love grinding, as it turns out, and I've been doing a bunch of that. I don't know if you guys keep track of New World. I just want to get my, this is going to be the weekly New World segment now, because while I'm still playing it, I just have eyes peeled and everything. And I think it's really interesting to just watch a new MMO studio be out there and kind of go through baby's first big patch and deal with the community. They are popping off with updates. I think last time when we talked, I was basically saying that the endgame loop felt a bit stale, and it felt like the entire game was built upon some spaghetti code that was leading to all these exploits and invulnerability glitches that were springing leaks every time they'd fix something. I don't know that has changed, but they have fixed a bunch of bugs, and they're doing so at a rapid pace. And the subreddit seems to so for however accurate a pulse on the community a video games subreddit is anymore, because I feel like they tend to just get kind of negative, and then you just get into the polar posts of just if you hate the game, stop being here. And it's just well, I hate the game because I care, and then it's just nonstop. But it's 4 days after a patch, people are so stoked and all the negative posts disappear. And then the 3 days before the next weekly patch, it's people start getting itchy again and complaining about the same things. So it'll be interesting to see if that resolves at some point. They made a gigantic post about all the new shit that they have coming up for November. And then this past week, they also announced that they are launching a PTR, which people have been imploring them to do. There's going to be a new weapon type. They have various devs from different disciplines all kind of chiming in. They're not funneling all of the data through, one or another community manager. It'll be hey, I'm so-and-so from the dev team, and I'm working on combat changes. And we're doing a bunch of things to make weapons switching feel better, fewer delays. We're going to standardize all this animation canceling stuff. And then there will be another person being hey, I do the PvP. Here's what we're thinking about PvP next. They're very, very engaged. And I think, in relation to our transparency topic, I think they've been really open about everything they're planning to do, about when their patches are going to be, when you can expect the patch notes. I really like their communication cadence so far. I think they're doing a great job with it. The only thing is, and this is so when we talk about transparency, I feel we kind of want to talk about there's the whole concept of radical candor. I don't know if that was an official thing at Blizzard, but sometimes you just want to hear somebody just tell you it fucking is, right? And the thing that I don't feel I've gotten from AGS so far is there was a big to-do about a gold duplication exploit, one that I guess went particularly rampant, and an item duplication exploit as well. Apparently it's possible to desync the client in all these ways that allowed for this kind of stuff, with introducing packet loss and shit on your end. So people were duping, and you would just see all these posts coming up about the integrity of the game is being ruined. The dupes are already in the economy. They can't track them. Everything's trashed. Rare materials are selling for nothing. Sky is falling. And the more of that type of shit you read, I mean, that's a really dangerous thing to have running loose. That, it would fully stop me from playing the game if I just felt it was a cheater's paradise, right? So Amazon did eventually come out and acknowledge, yeah, there are dupes, and we're actioning people. But they've kind of stopped talking about it, and I'm still put off by the odd dupe post that comes up on Reddit every day or two talking about how it's kind of you'll never fully know the extent of the damage that was introduced, and Amazon will never fully tell us. And so if you're the type of person that is bothered knowing that there could be millions of duped gold or, endgame armor, whatever, floating around out there, I just don't think you're going to get resolution on it. And I find that kind of problematic. It's stopped really bothering me now, but there are some people that I think that probably won't come back to the game because they won't be able to let it go. And it's going to be this conspiracy theory where, they can neither confirm nor deny the full extent of the damage, because if it really is widespread and untraceable because it's been allowed to be laundered and has spread out, maybe they don't even know themselves, right? But it is an issue that it's I can understand how it would be, PR suicide to really let folks know if things are bad. But I also wish they would just level with us, Anyways, that's the New World Minute, plus 4 or 5 minutes. I'm really interested to see what this game looks like in 6 months and a year. I feel they're at a real burnout pace with improving it. I don't know that it's going to be enough to keep everybody that's still playing in. It does seem to be losing players kind of week over week. But the folks who really want to make a home there, I think they'll keep a pretty steady core. And if they keep up at this pace with content, I think they'll find a nice niche for themselves and they'll pull people back in pretty well with expansions. Like they definitely are committing. But that's not the only MMO we want to talk about today. There was an announcement with Final Fantasy XIV. The expansion got delayed, Candace.
Oh yeah, that was quite an emotional journey to watch. Did you guys watch Yoshi P talk about it?
No, I didn't.
They did the town hall, and usually right before launch they'll do like a I forget what it's called, like a direct, not PlayStation Direct, whatever direct. No, that's Nintendo. I fucked it up already.
Square
but
Enix
you
Direct,
can usually tune in. Oh, it's like a letter from the producer. That's what it is, or like letter from the game devs. And they'll show the trailer. They'll get you all hyped up. They'll talk about a bunch of stuff, and then they'll like talk about day one or whatever. And so they did the letter from the producer or live letter or whatever, and he was there, and he came up and he's like. We want to thank you for tuning in or whatever. We actually have Yoshi P here, and Yoshi P came on, and he's the game director, and he his wording was really good. I loved how transparent he was. He was basically like, "Hey everybody, unfortunately we have some really bad news and I'm going to be upfront about it. We're going to have to delay the game, and I want to talk about like first, I want to apologize sincerely for delaying the game. I understand, like, he showed empathy. He's like, I understand that a lot of you have taken off time from work to play this game, and you want to play it, and we want to play it too. We want you to play it. He explains that this is a larger expansion than they've ever done, but that's no excuse for it to be delayed. But he said that the reason for the delay was him. He took all ownership of it. He said,
really?
Yeah, was that it is such an important expansion because it's supposed to tie off the Heidelin story, the main story basically, and then begin a new chapter. That's why it's the Endwalker story. And there were too many threads that were left untied, and he didn't appreciate it. And so he said it was worth it to go back, comb through the game, and make sure that we've tied off all of the loose ends because our narrative is very important to us. And again, this is just me being selfish as a game director. The game could have launched on time. All the features are already in. Everything is in and tuned, but we need the extra time to make sure that our quality assurance department and that our localization department has a chance to do, the proper pass on this because our fans deserve it, basically. And it didn't feel like a spin at all. It didn't feel like, well, you should be lucky to have this. Like, I feel like a lot of other people would be like, well, because it's so big, that's the excuse, and we're pushing it back. And then Yoshi P actually broke into tears, especially he broke into tears when he mentioned that he's sorry because he knows that people really wanted the game and that they took time off. It is right when he said that people took time off to play this game. You could tell he really felt bad, And again, I'm not saying that you have to cry on camera to have that kind of transparency, but I just appreciate that there was no excuse made. It was we want to do what's right, and it just needs a little bit more time. We're not going to blame COVID. We're not going to blame, a bad schedule. And he said something along the lines of, this is the first time that he's ever slipped in his career, and it wasn't an easy decision to make. But anyways, it was great. It was all translated because none of it's really in English. The producer speaks some English, but Yoshi P doesn't speak much English at all. So
yeah, he's that fantastic translator.
And oh yeah, she was amazing. The thing that I think, and usually if you announce that your game is going to be delayed, that's going to, a lot of people are going to roll their eyes or they're going to be upset, and that just doesn't seem to be the feeling around this delay. People were pretty positive about it, and I think the difference is that kind of transparency and just there's no PR spin. He's just talking about why the game's late. There's like an authenticity that you can feel, I guess.
I think it's probably, more that. I think that Yoshi P comes off as very human and very vulnerable, and the transparency obviously contributes to it, but I think it's just like he's riding on years of a reputation based off of that level of, human interaction and playing the game and engaging with the community very earnestly. So I just don't see it's changing. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I'm trying to imagine the Final Fantasy XIV community getting mad at anything Yoshi P says. Like, I don't know if they will.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely like on the high of goodwill, right? I think the goodwill relationship they have with players is really great right now. And I think it's all well deserved. I feel like they went through that whole journey with the original game, and doing Realm Reborn and all of that, and made headlines, and people were really taken aback by how transparent they were back then as well. I think it's a lot of it comes from Japanese culture as well as it's a lot about almost just making a great product or having a great company. It all comes. It's like it runs deep in terms of your identity and your sense of self and your honor with in what you do and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see, and it definitely, I think, unfortunately, like for Blizzard, really, it kind of like creates such a contrast. And it's something that they kind of have to play like catch up to, sort of thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it just made me think about what fosters that kind of goodwill with your community. And a lot of it is the authenticity that we talked about. So, like, I guess if that was a vector, or like an axis of creating this kind of relationship with your community, certainly needs to be authenticity there. And I don't know how else to describe it besides that. Like, like, don't put the PR spin on it.
But and it's so timely too, because they just announced the community council initiative, which I think is a good initiative. I think that's it's a good step. I think that's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like in the video when they did it, it just felt kind of scripted. Like you could tell people were reading off.
Oh, you're talking about WoWs? Yeah.
Yeah, WoWs. Yeah, exactly. And and I don't blame any of the team members or anything. I just think it was just kind of they just sort of rushed the video, and they were just trying to make sure it was one-shotted or something like that. But I don't think it really speaks to their true intentions with it or whatever. But in terms of optics wise, again, this talking about the contrast between, say, Final Fantasy and the other teams and stuff. They're definitely setting the bar in terms of like player relations, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean by the authenticity, and not that it's not okay to read from a script, but I think that if you don't put the PR spin on it, which is that's why it felt so not authentic. Because I know Morgan, I know that he's a really smart dude, and I know he has a lot of like really good opinions, and he could have sat in front of that camera and one shot it. But it feels like what they were trying to do with that video was have everyone have the same message, so that they could cut between people, so it sounds like more people are have the same message. Because they did that a couple of times. And that's what I mean. Like, that's a very PR spin to put on something, and that doesn't feel authentic. Even if those were the authentic words that they all sat in a room and came up with, right? Like, that could have been true to what they all wanted to say. So that's why I think, like, authenticity is important. But the thing that PR is good about is making sure that things are communicated in a respectful way, and in a, like, I guess the tone or the class that you want, like, as elegantly as you, or with the same grace, I guess. And so it's not just enough to come out and talk about things authentically, but you have to be respectful. And so you have to understand the language of respect. And I think that's something that the Japanese culture gets very right. So it's almost, I wouldn't say it's second nature for someone like Yoshi P, but someone in his standing and someone who's been in charge of a lot of people for a long time probably understands the language of respect very well. So.
So I open up the floor if anyone wants to make a comment or talk about this, but I also kind of want to just say that a thing with transparency too is just if you are going to be really transparent, it's not always going to come out perfect, right? You have to kind of allow for some sort of rough edges and some sort of messiness, like maybe in the case of Yoshi P, it's like, yeah, you may cry or something, or get emotional, or go off script, or say something that not everybody on the team would necessarily agree with, or PR agree with something, right? Like it's all going to be messy, and that's kind of what makes it authentic, right? I always give a good example of, or try to give an example of, Elon Musk when he talks in his events. He's like pretty kind of a terrible speaker, public speaker. Like he mumbles a lot. He's the opposite of what.
But
what,
it's him. You
what
know what
they
he's
try to
about,
train
right?
you. Yeah. But people want to hear from the person who's designing it or building it or invented it. They don't want to hear from the kind of perfect looking, perfect speaking type of person that's just PR speak, right? So
Yeah, I think the other thing that you have to do to foster goodwill that Final Fantasy has done really well is the consistency that they've had. So it's okay to slip every now and then. Final Fantasy doesn't, which is really impressive. But I think that the reason that they don't slip is because they never let themselves slip, if that makes any sense. And I wanted to talk about how there's like this fallacy. I won't talk about which team it was, but like they'll say, okay, you're being locked out of your tools and you're not going to be able to make the game after this one day. And they scare the whole team into thinking that that's whenever your pencils down, you have to be done. But a couple of teams know that that's like a joke because they'll immediately get the ticket to open up the tools again and start doing work. And whenever you do that for long enough, you get used to that first date being a lie. But the second date's the real date. But then whenever you treat that second date like it's the real date, guess what? Then you need a third date. And it's just this like chicken and egg cycle where people don't respect the boundaries of a cutoff date. And so they never learn to scope and they don't need to plan as effectively because they've never been held accountable for the dates that they've committed to. And you can see that on the sub-team level. And because I truly believe that every video game ships their org, in a game that says we're releasing this day and they push it back and then they push it back, it just becomes like a language for that company. And so that's why I think that being consistent with your ship date means that you're being real about your ship date, which means that your team can be real about your ship date and that you will probably ship more consistently, barring, big catastrophes. And even if there is a big catastrophe, if you're really committed to that ship date, then you'll cut scope and you'll build in a way that you can modularly cut things out of the scope of something, which is enormously hard in a MMO, obviously, because so many of the systems are interconnected. But so anyways, so if there was another axis for building goodwill with your community, I would probably say it's consistency. And that doesn't mean that you can't slip. It just means that most of the time you don't. And when you do, you go back to that authenticity and you go back to the respect for your community.
Yeah. Trust is hard to build and easy to lose. It's just
I also love what you said, Candace, of every game ships its org.
That was such a good pull quote. Totally.
That's a smart one.
That's the Twitter banner. Yep.
Yeah. Darklave, do you have any comments or anything?
Actually, going back to Yoshi P, whenever they announce a patch, they are always very direct about the date, normally. That's why, this delay is such a blow to them, because what they would normally do, right, every patch and expansion gets, 3-4 live letters dedicated to it. Like, the first one's, the first part of the announcements, and they get a lot more detailed in the second one, and they read the patch notes in the third one. And what they do with the first one is that they'll give a vague, a more vague area of when the patch will probably release. Like they'll say late spring or early summer or something like that. And then the second one, they'll give you the actual date, which is usually 2 weeks after the live letter. Then it just keeps going from there. So yeah, for this to happen for them, it's probably pretty rough.
Another complication, that's a really good point, where they'll be vague at first, and even that builds goodwill because they do, if it is, late spring or something like that, it will still be spring. But another thing that maybe that studio doesn't have to worry about as much, or maybe studios just shouldn't worry about it as much as they do. I'm not sure, but I seem to recall a lot of like a company like Blizzard, for example, that ships a lot of video games because also they're linked with Activision or whatever, and they're sharing a lot of resources. you don't want to ship games at the same time when you're sharing resources, especially if you're sharing things like CS resources, for example. Can you imagine what would happen if Blizzard CS, Diablo shipped as the same day as a World of Warcraft expansion or something? Like that would be, they would tap out. I'm sure there's also resources like internet bandwidth and stuff like that. And I wonder if Final Fantasy has to worry about that kind of overlap.
They usually, from what I've noticed, if they're going to be releasing like a big Final Fantasy expansion or a big Final Fantasy patch, then like any game that would potentially compete with that in Square Enix is usually released about a month after the fact. At least from what I've seen with they stagger them a bit, so they make sure their games don't compete too hard against one another.
Yeah, so that's always tough, and that probably causes some pushbacks because then, of course, if you have a lineup ready for 2021 or 2022, and then one of your game titles slips, then that means almost every other game title has to slip.
Final Fantasy's become 14 has become their most profitable game at this point. So to have Endwalker slip up even a little bit probably threw a couple wrenches in the works.
Oh, I bet. I've returned to Final Fantasy 11 a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's probably
they're still doing something. Final Fantasy 11 too. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just thinking earlier about what Chris said, and you have this dichotomy that is Final Fantasy's communication versus Blizzard's communication, and kind of one goodwill versus the other, and people in live chatting are talking about it too. And it strikes me as basically the perfect time to announce that you have to delay an MMO to increase its quality, because the saga of New World since it came out has basically been this game needed another fucking year. If you want to know what happens when you don't delay something for quality, and they had to delay it a handful of times, but like there were just a lot of bugs. I think that it's obviously a fantastic title still, and I'm loving it, but like there would have been a lot to fix, and it just comes at like the right time, I think, to drop for MMO players. Like, hey, we're gonna make sure we get things right. And the fact that it's coming from this guy personally, because he's saying he played through it and there were some things that aren't up to his standards. Like, I mean, how do you argue with that? I think that the Final Fantasy XIV community they have so much trust in him as a game director that plays the title. Like, he's got multiple characters, right? He clears the content.
No, he's a top parser. He's in the top 1% of black mages. It's insane.
We don't deserve him, as they say.
Nobody deserves Yoshi P. He cosplays whenever he announces things too. Nobody deserves Yoshi P.
Yeah, he cosplays as one of the new jobs every time.
So, like, people can sniff out authenticity, right? I mean, we're biologically wired to just read it or not read it, and he just brings it to you. It's the same. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons that people like Asmongold Zach as much as they do too. I mean, the guy is just what you see is what you get. Half of his updates are just him in a treehouse in front of a fucking camera, right? So
but everyone appreciates that because it's him.
People appreciate it. Totally. You know what you're getting.
Even though he says he has a separation of like Zach and Asmon, like that veil's pretty thin overall.
Yeah, and it's a strong contrast to that Community Council video, which opens up with the World of Warcraft montages and the stirring music, and then the cuts between people. Like, it feels kind of put on, right?
Yeah. Like, think about this. Like, even back in 1.0, when Yoshi P first got on the team, day one, he pretty much showed up and told everyone, we got to redo this. And that's how he got the ball rolling on ARR. He worked his hardest to save 1.0, but like once 1.0 started to flounder, that's when he started the letters from the producers live and just told everybody, we got to remake the game, basically.
Yeah, it built a lot of goodwill, but it also, I'm sure it made a lot of people feel pretty betrayed as well, because some people dumped money on a collector's edition for cosmetics that wouldn't exist and stuff like that. It's a real double-edged sword there.
But but here's the thing they did with that though. For starters, they gave everybody a lower subscription if you did play long enough in 1.0. And then the other thing too, all those collector's items were transferred into 2.0. Not
even the XP onion hat.
Yeah.
I don't remember the onion hat being put in for extra XP bonus. That's why I bought the fucking things.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't. Maybe the onion hat doesn't do the EXP thing, but I know all the 1.0 items are actually still in the game. You can actually find them all on the market board. It's pretty funny.
That's wonderful.
There's just like, and I felt this way while I worked at Blizzard and while I had my period of like just lamenting all of the alpha and beta feedback in BFA that felt like it was being ignored. I felt like there was a really big period of discontent leading into BFA where people started doomsaying about certain changes coming through with Azerite, et cetera.
People feel way worse about that expansion than it really was in the long run.
Well, totally. But so quality of BFA aside, I'm just trying to like kind of set the scene here. And I remember being puzzled as to like why the World of Warcraft developers wouldn't just come out and say some shit that they sort of actually intend and kind of like treat the player base as a player base that will understand the economics of making games and the need for certain systems and stuff like that. Like, I could never be a game director because I would just be off the cuff. And I think that like I've seen Ian be incredibly frank and he feels transparent in moments. Like when he talks about his design intentions and what they're trying to achieve, it's like, yeah, that's what it is. I get it. That's what this guy actually wants. But there are some moments where I just feel like when people complain about, why is this thing stretched out over 40 weeks and why is it so painful and some of those pain points have obviously been since removed. But I just sort of wonder why companies can't, like, why can't people just come out and say the elephant in the room, which is just like, well, we need to space it out. Because that's just like the pace that we can develop it at, it's the pace we can QA it at, that's the pace that we want people to be playing it at because we want them to stick around and see things unfold and not get bored in 3 days. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. There's not,
actually, I'm going to go back to the live letters. This is actually something Yoshi P has done in the live letters. He's actually had entire segments of the live letters dedicated to like their project management process, their like actual system design philosophy and all this stuff. And it's like really boring for most people, but the fact they do it at all is amazing because they explain it in excruciating detail as to why things happen the way they do.
Yeah. I think it's a good question of like, when does the transparency stop? Because I think in the beginning of any company or any kind of thing, it's always going to be transparent in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But I think over time it just changes. And I think a lot of that is just, once something goes wrong, then the reaction is, okay, we can't do that anymore. We have to grow up. We have to have a process. We have to have, we got to come together and talk about this before we say anything. And then, so.
Sure. Yeah, like Blizzard in 2021 would not have let... Actually, this is actually a poor example because I feel like Jeff Kaplan was really appreciated for his candor when he would speak to everybody. But I was going to say, like, you probably wouldn't let him go off the horn as Tiggle in 2021 to let people know what the state of things was. But yeah, it's...
Really just depends.
Yeah, I guess some people kind of get away with it if you get people used to a certain communication style. But I don't know. I won't ask you two to implicate any particular aspect of like why this has happened or any person, but I do feel like WoW communication has some layer of like handcuffs that will never come off that Final Fantasy XIV seems rather free of.
It's not just about being transparent, I think, because if you are completely transparent with your audience, you would talk about all the things that you want to put in the game that is out of scope, which I don't think a lot of people do. Because I think the moment that you talk to people about unreleased content, that's kind of a promise that you're making. And so that's why I wanted to be clear about transparency for the sake of transparency versus the promises that you're making to your community.
That's actually a good point because when they were developing 2.0, there actually are a lot of cut features that they had mentioned in those original live letters, and they've never done anything like that since.
Yeah, because once you announce it like that, it becomes a promise. But then once there is something that's worth talking about, it's okay to talk about it to completion. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk about just briefly as an aside, and this isn't like an indictment on anything, but a long time ago when I first started doing spokesperson work for World of Warcraft, I was very excited for the opportunity to represent World of Warcraft because it's a game that I love. It's a game that I knew a lot about. I felt like I had encyclopedic knowledge of the game. If anyone was to main tank the questions about, hard raid or itemization stuff, back in like 2013, 2014, I probably could have gone at bat with the best of them. And so whenever thank you, when I was given the opportunity to speak on behalf of World of Warcraft, I was so excited. But the stuff that I had to talk about whenever I would go overseas to like Spain to talk about Mists of Pandaria, for example, they were all stuff that was out of my realm of expertise. Because the expansion, and this is what I'm chipping towards, is that a game like that is so big, and there are so few people who are competent in the language of all of the game. That's why you have to have strong leadership, because those people should be not competent, but like well versed, fluent, I guess, in the language of the whole game. So, for example, whenever I was interviewed by a blog, they asked me about the visual design of Miss Pandaria, and I didn't know what to say. That it wasn't something that I knew a lot about. And if I had read all of the press blogs, and if I had memorized every single one of the, this is what this feature is, and here's all the sexy taglines for this feature, I could have answered the question. It would have felt very like fake and surface level, because it was fake and surface level, right? Because I don't know about level design. I don't know about artistic expression. I don't know about mood and theme when it comes to spaces and environments in the game. And so I had a really negative reaction the first time that I came back from representing, because I thought that I was inadequate. And the second time that I did it, I reached out to someone who I thought was very good at public speaking. Doesn't matter who the name of this individual is, but what he told me was really important. He said, don't talk about stuff you don't know about. Mm-hmm. And the PR people tell you that. They're like, don't rattle off shit you don't know. But it didn't really strike a note until I had done it once. But then, and I also experienced the difference between something I'm comfortable talking about and I know a lot about, and then I can feel like I can be very transparent about, versus the talking points that someone is trying to instill upon me. Like there's a huge, huge, huge difference. And so I decided, no, from now on, if you're not going to send me to an event that someone wants to talk about the topic that I'm in, like not in charge of, because I was never in charge of it, but that I'm well versed in, then there's no reason for you to send me to that event. Or you can promote me in a way that I am more connected with the soul of the game, instead of just the narrow branch of content that I currently possess. And so anyways, that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that even if you are a very good developer and you know a lot about the game, you're not going to know everything about the game. And so that's why spokesperson duty is so hard, because people will ask you questions out of left field, and you'll really want to answer those questions, especially as a woman in 2014, 2015. I wanted to go out there with a big smart brain, and I wanted to say, oh yeah, I'm a woman and I know everything about World of Warcraft, and surprise, I've been hired for a long time and we exist and stuff like that. But I just had no confidence doing that. To pull all of that in, I think that some of the reasons that an organization can struggle with authenticity and with transparency is because there aren't enough people who are in charge of or have ownership of large swaths of the game, which also makes sense if you consider that some games have teams of 2,500 people. Some teams are 15, some teams are 300, 400, or whatever. And as a team gets larger, you become more specialized, and there are fewer people that can speak on behalf of the game. And so then it becomes a question of, well, who can speak on behalf of this? How much do they know? And is it applicable to the thing that you're talking about? And also, are they interested in being the face of the game? And so it becomes less and less likely the more people that you dole those responsibilities out to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great, sidebar, and it's so true. And, it was always funny when I was watching so many of those interviews, and it was like sometimes when, Chris Robinson, who's like the art director of WoW at the time, was being asked, like, why'd you nerf the coefficient of Frostbolt or whatever, and he's just like, so it goes both ways, of like where the artists have no idea like how to answer some minute esoteric class balance question, and it always depended on the audience, because if it was the players like at BlizzCon and stuff, usually they want to talk about classes or they want to talk about customization of their character. Like those are like usually the top two things. And so I always felt bad when it was like the producers or the artists being asked like those system things. But
I was thinking about the way that you would handle questions all the time on Twitter, Chris, about PvP. I don't know if you ever got sort of knighted as an official spokesperson or if they gave you any kind of PR training or anything akin to what Candace may have had to go through, but like you were famously transparent about PvP scaling. And you have the fucking infamous MS Paint picture.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What did you learn from that experience? Like, would you do that again? Did you take anything? So for context, PvP scaling was introduced in Battle for Azeroth, and people discovered it, and they wanted to know how it worked. And eventually, Chris made a series of Twitter posts explaining it in a series of MS Paint pictures. And I mean, I'll let you take the rest of the story from there. But how did that experiment in transparency go?
No, it's such a good thing to bring up about this.
Is John talking Madden?
No, it's not that one.
It was about
sorry.
But that is another. I don't think anybody at Blizzard made that. That was like a fan one.
It was a meme.
But, anyways, a background of this too is that I always had forum access, and so at Blizzard, having a blue account and posting on the forums was always just like exciting, and not a lot of people at the studio had that access. And I would also kind of say most people at the studio didn't really care. Like a lot of people at the studio just love working on games, love making games. There wasn't a lot of people who just got thrills out of talking with the community. Mm-hmm. But it was something that I enjoy doing mostly because I like getting really quick feedback on stuff that I make and the psychology of understanding the player and things like that was always interesting to me. And so I was always super transparent, and so was most of the designers who would post in the forums about the game and stuff like that. And, at some point, kind of the forums turned into, not great. And just, I don't know, the audience on there just kind of didn't really stay high quality. And the discourse became kind of not great. And so a lot of the conversation turned to Twitter. And I would also kind of say that over time, the company, Blizzard was turning less transparent. They kind of were like, well, we had a few blowups in the forums, and we think just talking to the players less in the forums is better or whatever. And so a lot of the conversations turned on to Twitter. And one of the conversations at one point was about the PvP scaling system, which, this is a whole topic on itself, but in the game, there's a big power difference between two players who have different, or between players in general who have different tiers of gear. So if you have a really great gear in the game and you have end game sets and it comes from top raid or arena ranking, you're going to do way like 10x, 20x, whatever it is, damage against an undergeared player, right? Or somebody who had just hit max level at that level band. And so kind of what the PvP scaling system was trying to do was reduce the differential between those two players, right? And so, but the PvP scaling system became like a catch-all for any sort of, it was blamed for any kind of bug or thing with itemization in the game. And so it got like a lot of unfair rap to it, right? And so anyways, I was trying to post on Twitter to explain what I meant. And I just made like this like MS Paint thing. And this is what I do when I talk with other designers or people in the team or my friends or whatever, and, it kind of got memed on mostly because it was still unclear even after I posted that, like people didn't interpret it completely. So that was one thing. And the other is that usually when you talk to a developer at Blizzard, there's like, it's so curated that it was kind of really, it was something they didn't expect, right? And so, usually when someone from Blizzard would talk about something like I was conversing with players on Twitter about, it'd be like in a blue post, people like the Europe office and the, Asian office or whatever it is would all debate and talk about it. It would get like edited and be released, right? But I just can't stand that. I just, and that's, I also know Greg hates that too, like Greg Street, who was my former boss now at Riot. I just like talking directly, quickly with players. And so anyways, yeah, it got misinterpreted, and what I would love to have done is clarify more things on it. Maybe even take the engineer who coded the PvP scaling system, who actually now works at Notorious, my studio, Court, and to like explain how the system works and to clarify a lot of things, right? But Blizzard was just like, oh my god, that was a bad post, and don't post anymore or whatever, and so they became kind of reactionary to it and just kind of stifled any further communication, which I thought was the wrong way to go. But that's their kind of view. And so that's kind of my thoughts on it, I guess.
It's a really good point that you make about miscommunications. I remember writing a blog post once, and it got churned through an editor because I don't grammar well. English is my first language, but I suck at it for someone who's been speaking it for 37 years or so. I noticed that I've worked with editors before, and it's so important to get an editor that understands the language of your game. I keep using the language of in this episode, but like, for example, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I have a bad habit of using multiple tenses in the same question or same statement. So I'll say like, I'll start in the past tense and then I'll use like a future tense or something, or I'll start in the future tense and I'll use like a past tense or something like that. And my editor was like, oh, I'm going to fix this to use the same tense. But when she did that, it changed the meaning of what I said. And so I had to explain to her, well, that's not what you just said is actually the opposite of how the game works. And she said, no, I was just fixing the grammar of your statement. But the grammar was actually more correct to what the game was, the bad grammar. And so then I had to explain to her what I wanted to say. And then she gave me the proper grammar way of saying it, which was great. But that's why it's really important also, if you are going to churn something through an editor, that they need to understand the game. So that fortunately, this woman is someone who very deeply understood the game, and so I was able to use a language that she could understand. But if you have someone that doesn't play the game and they're just someone who's really good at grammar, they can accidentally churn the meaning into something completely different. And I've actually experienced this more than once, not just with my bad tenses. It actually also happened when I went to Taiwan, where the translator didn't play WoW, didn't understand words like resurrection, or there was some word that they used that's like a player skill ability that the translator didn't understand. And so when she translated and asked me the question, I think the skill was supposed to be rebirth, but it was also translated into something like Phoenix and like Phoenix Scar. I can't remember what she said, but like the question made no sense to me. And I couldn't answer the question because the translator didn't understand WoW, didn't play WoW. And but what's important is whenever you want to have a conversation like that and you want it to scale, you want to churn it through an editor and through all the localization and stuff like that. But it's just so important that the people who are reading it and translating it, even if it's within the same language, understand the game.
Lotta, I mean, it sounds like you're both saying that the potential for being misinterpreted goes up as soon as you start adding intermediaries, but obviously they have their benefits. We're not trying to say like PR is junk, don't use them, devs should just go straight every time. I think that
obviously,
yeah, you can have intermediaries and they can do like an authentic sounding job. I think that like, I'm just going to keep thinking about New World because I've been just like checking the dev tracker nonstop, and I'm just trying to think about how I'd classify the tone that they seem to have adopted so far. They feel like 90% kind of like very cheery customer service phone operators that like seem to be unruffled. And then there's like 10% kind of developer humility, authenticity that creeps through. Like there have been a couple of posts where they've come out and said like, they'll tell people to calm down in ways when they're just kind of getting out of line and getting off topic, moderator stuff. But there was one where a developer said, these bugs that you're talking about as if they're the same bugs that have been there since beta that we haven't fixed. We did fix a lot of instances of this type of bug during beta, and these aren't occurring in the same way, and they weren't caught. And you saying that we never fixed them is like really depressing and kind of feels devaluing because like we want to make this game as good as possible. We thought they were gone, and it's crushing to see them back. And so don't make the narrative out to be that like we're not trying to fix bugs. And I thought that like it was just the right level of kind of confrontational with the player that said like, look, cut these dudes some slack. Like they care. I think that when people see that you really care and you have some skin in the game, you don't have to go full Yoshi P and cry about it or take all the blame on yourself. But like that goes a long way, and it's that I think is tough to do through an intermediary.
Yeah, I think another side topic to this whole thing is like communication. Like we've talked about like player feedback and communication things before, but there's a whole art to communicating as well. It's to players or to the community or to each other on the team and stuff. It's something I'm thinking a lot about right now as well. So anyways, I think we should probably wrap up the show, but
okay, yeah. It's been a long one. There's a
good
lot
topic
to talk about there. We should do the studio organization one at some point. And honestly, spoilers perhaps for a future episode, but as we're getting close to Christmas, Chris, at one point you hinted at maybe doing like the min-maxed lifestyle accessory recommendations episode.
Yeah,
totally
or we could do a blog or something. Yeah,
sure.
Luca and I really, min-max on different like products and stuff, and I think it kind of like the Oprah's favorite things episode.
Oh my God, we're not sponsored, right?
No. This is we're not sponsored. This would all just be like free spawn. But
I ain't never been paid for this.
I know. That won't stop the shilling, though. I think that like sometimes you just become so obsessed with a gadget or a technique or whatever that you just need to proselytize to everyone and just let them know. And I know Chris and I get that way, and Candace, probably you have your favorite things too. Good.
I recently did it with.
God.
What's your recent one?
Recently, but it's like office related.
Okay.
And so this is like a spoiler. Maybe I could save it for the episode, but I'll just say it now because it's funny. I was researching audio video equipment for meeting rooms that could work in a hybrid environment. So traditionally, what you get is some Logitech camera that's under the TV, and then you get some sort of mic that's at the center of your conference table, yada yada yada. But surprise, that shit's like $3,000 to $5,000, right? And so I was like, is there anything else I can get? And so I found this thing called a Meeting Owl. And the Meeting Owl is kind of like an all-in-one solution that has like a 360 camera at the top of it. And what it does is it has a 360 panoramic camera, I can't say the word, camera that, and then when it shows the video of your meeting, it takes each person who's talking and puts like a separate kind of like grid of your meeting and all the participants. So you don't see like one shot of the entire office. You see everybody's individual crop pictures. And so I told another founder about that, and he bought it. And then another founder saw him use it, and some other guy bought it. So I'm already finding like the min-max products for the office too. So
dude, if we ever start doing actual spawn on this show, and honestly, it's kind of one of the things that I enjoy the most from podcast to podcast sometimes. Like, some hosts are just really good at doing it. I know it's annoying, but some hosts do it so seamlessly. I think you just would have a field day. Like, I think you're maybe made to do sponsored reads on podcasts.
Well, I mean, I don't want to shill shit I do not use or think is garbage.
Of course.
But yeah.
Yeah. We get it straight. Candace, any favorite device you can just point out before we get out of here? We can each just do a one mini one.
No, all I want to do is say something that's very not suitable for work. So good night, everybody.
Okay. We'll see you all next week.
We'll save that for the the Valentine's Day episode.
Okay. Take care of yourselves. See you soon.